I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
That's right, reggae. Hey, reggae, reggae, reggae. Give me the A. This is for all the rock and rollers in here. All the fancy ladies right here. Give me reggae, reggae.
What's up, everybody? Come on in.
Happy birthday, Derek. What we got here? That woo.
Good BelaDona crew.
And Stephanie. Stephanie got a birthday. One more time. Let's go say boo.
I used to bite my tongue and hold my breath. Get to rock the boat and make a mess. So I sat quietly, agreed politely. I guess that I forgot I had a choice. I let you push me past my breaking point. I stood for nothing, so I fell for everything. You held me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear my voice, you hear my sound, like thunder gonna shake your ground. You held me down, but I got up, yeah. Get ready, cause I had enough. I see it all, I see it now.
Let's rock,
I
man.
got the eye of the tiger.
That's right.
Dancing through the fire.
Peace, Cincinnati.
I'm a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion, 'cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear
Y'all hear me roar.
Now I'm floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. I earned my stripes. I went from zero to my own hero. You held me down, but I got up, already brushing off the dust. You hear
Peace.
my voice, you hear my sound, like thunder gonna shake your ground. You held me down, but I got up. Get ready, I had enough. I see it all, I see it now.
Let's rock,
I got the eye of the fire,
That's right.
dancing through the fire, 'cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion, 'cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear
Y'all hear me roar. Y'all hear me
Woo! I didn't even know it ended that soon. My bad. Welcome, everybody, back to I Mix What I Like. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Please do all the things as you come on in. Like, share, subscribe. Support the platform however you would like. And be advised before we get, I think that's Katy Perry. And honestly, I thought I had a longer version set up. But I think anyway, I wanted to, that's BelaDonaBand, by the way. And the lead vocalist there, Cherie, affectionately known at times as Sweet Cherie, it's always kind of weird for me. Like I can see I'm getting old, because when I first saw her, because she's also a keyboardist, and she was the keyboardist for Sugar Bear, Maisha and the Hip Huggers, featuring Sugar Bear and Juju from Experience Unlimited. and they had a band formed with Maisha as the front woman singer, who wasn't often there, oddly enough. So a lot of it was the EU band and Cherie playing keyboard, and she was like the young one and almost a little timid at first to take center stage. She had her one song was when they did Lil Kim's one of Lil Kim's songs. They did a Lil Kim song and she featured on that, but for the most part she played the back. And so to see her sort of, you know, grow up and come into her own with BelaDona and others, she's out there doing her thing. She's phenomenal. It's dope. And an all-woman band, by the way, an all-woman go-go band, not the first. Who was that? Who was the began with a P? The first all-woman, not Proper Utensils, somebody else. There's another one. Somebody may be in the chat. I don't know if we have old go-go heads in this chat like that. But anyway, welcome everybody. Again, this is going to be part one of this discussion. Part two will take place tomorrow on Black Liberation Media on Saturdays with Renee. So make sure that you're there for that as well. And welcome. Oh, what's up, Jared? I was just gonna say, I know that you had a live with Dwayne Monroe, so I have it in my watch later file. So if folks, but if you're wrapped up, great. If not, I was happily to have people go over there and come back here later. But anyway, welcome everybody. Peace, and thank you for joining me and us. So yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this since I saw the film a couple of weeks ago, and obviously been paying attention to a lot of the discussion popularly, and just it seemed like there was some anyway, I just wanted to get it started because there was some struggle getting the crew's schedules together. So if folks are available, they can join me today and tomorrow with Saturdays with Renee, and then we can always just keep the conversation going. It's not that, obviously, this is not meant to be exhaustive. So before we get into the film, there's a couple things I did want to say as preliminary comments. One, I've put it in the show description. My argument around my iron triangle, as it's been called, this argument that is just my spin on all of my arguments are really just spins on previously existing arguments, and often are simplified versions of them. But essentially the idea that in the context of a settler colony or a colonial situation as we are in here, and I'm sure there are other contexts where this would apply, but certainly in this one, there is no possibility for one to be simultaneously rich, famous, and politically radical. The function of media in a colony is as part of the colonial order. The apparatus, the media apparatus in this country has been evolved and studied and funded and resourced and designed as one of counterinsurgent psychological warfare for decades, and it may be among, if not the most sophisticated propaganda system ever evolved in human society, with its ability to co-opt, corrupt, rebrand, misrepresent, and to promote fraudulent versions of what it claims to be presenting. So in fact, just to borrow from an old argument, and I thought about doing a 15th anniversary. This is the 15th anniversary of I Mix What I Like, a mixtape manifesto, my one of only 2 single author books that I've written, and one I'm immensely proud of despite all of its flaws, and one that makes the argument that I still hold to this day around internal colonialism and media, and that I still think holds up quite well. But most immediately I'm bringing it up here because it does have a blurb from Boots Riley. Now, as I've said before, this was because at the time the book was published with AK Press, and he had some publishing arrangement with AK Press. Forgot exactly what, and it was arranged to the publisher. We had not met. Well, we had technically met, but not in this context. And with all due respect to Boots, I appreciate that he put his name on it for the I guess to help with the marketing. But I never really suspected he actually read and engaged the work. But it does say with this book, Jared Ball correctly and cogently posits hip hop in its rightful place as the most important literary form to emerge from the 20th century. Boots Riley, The Coup. And I was honored that I got this, even though I don't think it quite captures the point that I'm making in the book. But you know, but to make another point that I'm getting at is that I've been a fan of The Coup since the beginning. So I mean, this must be 30 years plus, something like that. Rest in peace, Pam the Funkstress. I've seen them perform. I've seen them perform as The Coup. I've seen Boots when he performed as what I forgot what they called it, but he had a live band fronted by a really strong Black woman vocalist for a time, and they performed at the University of Maryland. I brought my daughter. We met, and I interviewed Boots when I was with the Real News Network in 2015. We emailed a little bit here and there. So I appreciate his politics. I think he is an underrated MC. And I've been going back and listening to and reviewing his catalog, and I really don't understand why, in terms of hip hop, the hip hop pantheon, he should be much more elevated. Longevity, politics, lyrical skill. I mean, he's phenomenal. So all that to say, I'm deeply appreciative of Boots Riley. And in fact, I was thinking, you know, because they're on the same album, and I know that I Love Boosters is born as a film out of his song of the same name. I actually thought, and I made a note here, you know, My Favorite Mutiny is on that album, which is one of my favorite of their songs. And I thought that would have made a better song to make a movie out of. But anyway, so I at least want to start there. Like I am critical of this film. I'm not a fan of the film, and I'll explain in a little bit why. But I deeply appreciate Boots, and I also want to say I appreciate that the film was made. I'm glad he made it. I'm glad there's an attempt being made. I like that there is some effort to engage radically filmmaking and media making. That said, I don't think this was the way to do it, and I think that ultimately what we end up with is something that undermines the political goal and project that I think Boots has. So certainly that I would have, and maybe that's a projected bias as well. So I at least just wanted to start with those couple of preliminary remarks. And for the time being, just everybody know, I know we have the Undefeated chat, and welcome everybody. I know folks are coming in, and I look forward to engaging. For the time being, I am going to stay out of the chat, but I will be back. So just so I can focus through some of this and keep us to within some kind of time frame. Don't need to be here all day, but then I will check in with you all, and if you all have comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, consternation, condemnation, I will even make the link available, and folks can even join me if they like for a few minutes at least. So let's just do some of the preliminary work here. There will be spoilers, everybody. So if you haven't seen it and don't want to have anything spoiled, please. And I do think everybody should see it. Despite the criticism I'm going to have, I think everybody should see it. And I think that it should be made part of a discussion politically. And we could talk a little bit more about why I'm saying that the film exists. It's here, and it's being touted as something that is politically radical, and therefore, for those of us who are interested in these politics and the intersection of pop culture and radical ideas, we should definitely have something to say. And plus, if you're like me at all, you watch a lot of nonsense at some point anyway, so you might as well spend a couple of hours watching this. It's no less or no more worth. It's no more a waste of anyone's time than a lot of the time we spend watching our guilty pleasures and stupid stuff. But according to Wikipedia, it just as a quick summary, I Love Boosters is a 2026 American absurdist crime comedy film written and directed by Boots Riley. Following the adventures of a group of shoplifters, it features an ensemble cast that includes Keke Palmer, Naomi Aki, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Oh, and I know the reverse hashtags must be up in arms that this Black British woman took one of our jobs. Damn it. But Taylor Page Angulo, Papi Liu, Isa Gonzalez, Lakeith Stansfield, Will Poulter, Don Cheadle, Demi Moore. And I actually like I like these two characters and actresses very much. I enjoyed their performances even more admittedly than Kiki's. But anyway, the film premiered in 2026 at South by Southwest. And as I don't know if I'll get to it, but one of the articles I reviewed for this show, there was some controversy because Sundance would not pick up this film and did not pick up Sorry to Bother You either. So it debuted in South by Southwest and was released theatrically by Neon in May of 2022, with some connection to Annapurna, which we'll talk a little bit about because of the political overlaps with Megan Ellison and the Ellison billionaire right-wing Paramount owning TikTok owning Trump supporting white nationalists. And as you can see here, this is something that I encourage students to do with films and music that they listen to. Wikipedia is a good source for this kind of stuff where you can just quickly see who's written, produced. You can see the production company, Annapurna, an American independent media company founded by Megan Ellison. All right. Distributed by Neon with relationships with Universal and Focus, which is a subdivision of Comcast and Universal. So it's plugged in. And I think this is something that we will have to address, that it is plugged into the institution. So far, with a budget of 20 million, it's only netted 9 million in box office. So it is currently underwater, but there's still time. All right. Okay. So let me get to this. I don't know how well this is going to be ordered, but let me get these articles in. And again, folks, welcome everybody. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for joining me and us. And welcome. All right. So let me just show you a couple of other articles that I was looking at for this piece. Because I am interested in what others are having to say about it. And some of these reviews sort of capture at least some of what I have in terms of thoughts about the film. In this one from Vulture, Angelica Jade Bastien, I Love Boosters is colorful, gonzo, and an absolute mess. I I tend not to comment when I talk about films and stuff. I'm more interested in the politics. I don't trust my aesthetic eye or anything like that, so I don't usually get into. But I did like the colors and the brightness that I know was by design and intent in the film. I did appreciate the look of the film. I didn't have a problem with that. Not a fan of some of the. I guess I'll just say now I'm not a fan. I am biased in terms of I'm not really a fan of sci-fi. I'm not really a fan of horror. I'm not a fan of it's just not my thing. I do tend to prefer grounded, reality-based political dramas are probably what I would prefer more than anything. I tend to think action and sex scenes are more and more involved as distractions and to sell internationally, where you don't have to rely on a script that everybody is paying close attention to, or to cover up the absence of a plot in a story. But so I didn't really. I can't say that I appreciated some of the sci-fi elements of the film. We'll come back and talk a little bit about that, and I can't say I appreciated some of the horror elements either, and like for instance the Lakeith Stanfield's character, it's just not my thing. It's just not my style. But I did, in terms of this first line about the color, I did like the. So forgive me, I don't have with this one, I don't have my notes or highlights for some reason, but the author makes a couple of references to Tony Cade Bambara that I thought were really interesting. So I just wanted to start with this here. In a 1982 interview, artist, writer, activist Tony Cade Bambara is posed a crucial question by Kay Bonetti. What do you view as the function of the artist? What Bambara would go on to say has been flattened into, quote, the role of an artist is to make revolution irresistible. But her fuller response is more illuminating. The task, she said, of the artist is determined always by the status and process and agenda of the community that it already serves. If you're an artist who identifies with, who springs from, who is serviced by, or drafted by a bourgeois capitalist class, then that's the writing you do. Her response begins. As a culture worker who belongs to an oppressed people, my job is to make revolution irresistible. Bambara's personal creative philosophy bounced around my head after watching musician turned filmmaker Boots Riley's second feature, I Love Boosters. Her call is one I imagine Riley himself aligns with, to make revolutionary thought and action alluring for the masses who need it most. And this for me is a tension that I feel Boots struggling with and many other artists struggling with. And that's why I started with my point about my approach to this iron triangle. That, and I'll probably come back to this again as well. And it's similar to the political, journalistic, even organizing activist approach that I've borrowed from over the years from Glenn Ford, which is that, as Glenn would say of Black Agenda Report, the goal is not to reach the masses. The goal is to target those already in activist, journalist, academic spaces who would be receptive to the argument and who could echo, magnify, and make use of the argument in their work. This idea that we're going to produce media, journalism, academic work, even organizational activist work that's going to capture the masses capturing the apparatus of the state or political power or policy control is, I think, part of the fantasy and the contradiction we struggle with in many different spaces. It was my issues for years in organizational spaces with certain project ideas. It was certainly, when Glenn and I and Bruce and others would engage the so-called media reform movement of the 2000s, where their argument was we're going to democratize media, and our sort of response is that is fanciful. You're not going to democratize media within a settler colony. The goal should be to produce media that inspires and targets grassroots radical formations. But that's the tension, because there's not a lot of funding there. There's not a lot of fame there. There's not a lot of popularity in that work. So if any of the goal becomes, and this was even the tension that I felt that we struggle with Black liberation media, for instance. On the one hand, you want to build a platform that's going to attract an audience, similar to what my struggle here. Of course, I want as subscribers and people to watch and huge video counts, but to get that means to produce content that would serve the advertisers, the algorithm, a sort of already established popular public opinion, which is going to be established by the ruling elite, contrary to the work that we are trying to do. So to try to produce work that is going to make revolution, I already forgot the word that was used, alluring, irresistible, sorry, to make revolution irresistible to a mass audience in the context that we're in, I think is impossible. And I don't think should be the goal. And I think this is the contradiction that Boots runs into, and many run into, and to lesser extents and variations myself and others run into, that what I think to make revolution irresistible is not the job of the artist. It's the job of people involved in political organization and movement making, who will devolve those movements into efforts and actions and behavior that is itself irresistible and undeniable. But we're not going to be able to produce art that will both be recognizable to a mass audience, distributed, accessible to a mass audience, that will then also in and of itself change their consciousness. That's not how these things work. So I think the attempt there, if the goal is to get a film into 3,000 theaters, the goal then should be to the goal that should be adjusted politically, because it's not going to have a meaningful radical impact. The structure that would put a film into 3,000 theaters and promote it is not going to do so if it is containing messaging that will move audiences into insurgent positions when the apparatus is designed for counterinsurgent purposes. Back to the article here, and the author saying, if I were to list the attributes of I Love Boosters, it would sound like my jam, an original movie under 2 hours that is committed to practical effects and a bold use of color in charting the journey of the Velvet Gang, a group of young working class, hard up Black women stealing from luxury stores of designer Christy Smith, Demi Moore, and selling the goods at a discount rate as a matter of crafty survival. Sounds like a great story, by the way, and I'll put it in the show description. I should have done it already. If I don't remember, let me at least say it now. I think this 16-minute short film you can see for free on YouTube called Rainbow Girls does this, what is summarized here, in many ways better than what I Love Boosters does. And I'll come back and we could talk more about that. Why? Maybe pick up on that more tomorrow on Saturdays with Renee when we're in part 2 of this discussion. A story that ultimately dovetails into science fiction to convey the importance of worker solidarity against a capitalist system that brutally exploits us. So that's where I would start to drift away. My preference is not that. And then we'll come back and talk about it. I don't think it does that. I don't think the science fiction works to do the explanation that it attempts to. But that's on paper, she writes. In practice, I Love Boosters lurches into a discordant rhythm. For how vibrant and buoyant the film cinematography, production design, and costume design are, the script and its laborious dialogue are twice as laden. It is a shame, because as shallow as I find the storytelling in terms of the non-existent characterization and admirable but trite political messaging, the film is visually ecstatic in a juicy and exciting way. And, you know, interesting that they choose the word juicy there, because
phrasing.
One of the scenes it's too much. it's just too much. And you know what? You know what? I can't help it. I just realized I forgot I need to take a petty break. Oh my goodness, because I have a new drop. I made a new drop and I forgot to start the show with it. So forgive me, everybody. I'll come back to the article in just a second. But I think we need this very important. I think we need this very important reminder.
And we should support black businesses. We got to support black. You know, my buddy Jared Ball, Dr. Ball, who is at Morgan State, talks about this myth of black buying power. Another brother who teaches at Duke University, Sandy Darity, says, you know, we can't pool our money together and using that, buy our way out of oppression.
Right.
This is
never buy your way out.
You can't buy your way out. We can't create enough millionaires in a capitalist society. It just can't. Nick, as much money as you do or don't have, you can't write a check for everything you worth and free us.
Right.
It's not possible in a capitalist society.
Right.
I mean, LeBron James, that's great, brother. You're an employee.
Yeah.
You could be making $100 million a year, but guess what? Any cat that can write you a check for $100 million a year is making more money than you can count. You know what I'm saying?
And it's unfortunate because we do have so many young, prominent,
come on, brother,
black individuals, but that oppression, capitalism, we will never overcome it.
No,
we can operate within it.
Right.
So what happened? How do we go from that to that? What happened? I was looking for something the other day. I said, oh my goodness, look at that there. Look at what I forgot I had there. What happened? Anyway, back to the business. But what happened? Oh man. Okay. Back on track. And I'm sorry, let me get the author's name again, to Angelica J. Bastien, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The problem, Angelica continues, is Riley is not interested in film as art, as an art form, so much as as in using it as a vehicle for galvanizing pro-worker, pro-union, pro-communal rhetoric in a way that ultimately undermines his message. And I thought this is a very interesting argument. I'm very interested in talking with Samantha and Mtume and others who know film better than I do, if this point resonates with them as much as it does with me. But I felt the same way, and I felt I'm guilty in a much lower level of similar approaches that I've historically, for instance, in what I was writing about, and I Mix What I Like with my mixtapes, and I even got criticism from this. Mazi Mutafa in particular, shout out to Mazi, it is his personality, but had the important, ability to be frank with me at one point. It was basically saying aesthetically, even down to the packaging, your mixtape doesn't hit. And I'm saying to him, but I'm only interested in the mixtape as an art form so much as it's a vehicle for galvanizing pro-worker, pro-union, pro-communal rhetoric. And Mazi said, but it undermines your message, bro. He said,
it's wrong, bro.
You undermining your message. Riley's work as writer-director reflects a desire to have his ideas and political messaging reach a wide audience without showing care for his characters. This may sound wild considering how festooned I Love Boosters is with piquant craftsmanship and the kind of special effects you can reach out and touch. Stop motion, miniatures, matte painting. I didn't like any of that, though. I really don't like the stop motion. I didn't like the stop motion. I don't like the demon stuff. I really, really didn't like the we'll come back to this, the demon sex scene. Understandably, I understand the actress is Stanfield's real life wife, which I'm sure helped on set, but goodness gracious, I don't see, all I saw is that this was undermining whatever message was being attempted. Costume designer Shirley Curata uses texture, detail, and vivacious colors to create elaborate artworks that hair and makeup department has complemented with aplomb, creating visual arresting results. Production designer Christopher Glass matches the vibrancy with such fantastical details as a rolling ball of stressors. I didn't like that one either. And that felt not necessarily artistically, but in terms of story, it just felt done already. It's too obvious. It didn't make any particular radical points. The stress ball chasing her, it got bigger, of course, and all this. But I feel like and I'm sure some of you will know what other movies have done this, but I feel like we've seen that before, and this I didn't think it was particularly revelatory politically. Bills and eviction notices that only the Velvet Gang leader Corvette Keke Palmer sees. Natasha Brayer's ingenuity as a cinematographer meets the needs of the film and experiments with joyful abandon. But for all this wondrous beauty, I couldn't help but wish the script matched a tenth of this effort. There's no humanity in its details. And I agree. I think more attention should have gone to the script and to telling a story and to getting a plot and as we'll come to in a little bit, to making a much more grand finale. I mean, if you're doing sci-fi, if you're doing, you're creating another universe, why the limitations on the finale? But we'll come back to that. Real talk. Palmer is one of pop culture's most incandescent figures, whose natural cadence and sense of self yields an approachably bawdy humor. I don't think I agree with that. I think I might be in the small category of people who are underwhelmed by Keke Palmer's performances. In fact, I think the other two co-stars I thought were more compelling on screen. But whatever. Ultimately, I don't think that matters. There are gags in I Love Boosters, straight out of Looney Tunes, like Corvette trying and failing to run out of Christie's leaning condo building with the speed of Woody Woodpecker. I didn't like that. I don't need any of that. I was not a fan of any of that. So why does it feel like the script weighs down even the typically luminous and fleet Palmer? Why don't her lines zing? Why does almost every punchline feel overworked and underdeveloped? The film offers monologues about Corvette's loneliness and a stray line about her desire to not be in jail again. Yet I didn't get much of an understanding of her and what animates her life, which has left her with little choice but to squat in an abandoned fast food spot that reeks of fried chicken. I don't remember who else said this, but I had a very similar response. So forgive me for not knowing where I'm at least getting an agreeing sentiment here. But in Rainbow Girls, where you see the main characters homeless living out of their car, I thought did a much better job of conveying this point than what we see in the film. Sort of turning the fried chicken joint into her squatting spot. I don't know, maybe they thought it worked cinematically or as a stylistic thing, but I don't think it worked in terms of reality. And it felt less of a real houseless experience than what I saw in Rainbow Girls. And maybe again I'm projecting, because as I pointed out the other day in this this little back and forth I had on Twitter about buying power in the context of the Wonder Man show. And dude is telling me, defending Tyler Perry, telling me, you know, Tyler Perry is great because he went from homelessness and living in his car to being a billionaire. And I joked, which was accurate. I was like, but I said, at least when he was homeless, he had a car. I said that when I didn't have a house, when I was thrown out, I didn't have a car. So don't tell me I didn't have a fried chicken joint. But yeah, I thought that was, a sense of isolation is never evident in the performance's physicality or the narrative's exploration or lack thereof of the character. So when Corvette and her fellow booster, the level-headed Sade, Naomi Aki, have what's meant to be a breaking point in their best friendship, it evokes not a shred of emotional response because I still don't know who these women are. No emotional turn lands with the weight it needs to. I can't buy their friendship because they aren't written as people, but as vehicles for thorny political ideas made smooth and digestible. Riley assembles an envious cast. Taylor Page goes kooky, possessing the ability to transform into a biracial black woman played by Robin Thede when she holds her breath in one of the many heist sequences set to the jaunty carnivalesque score. I admit I like that part. And I had liked Robin Thede's show. I think it was on HBO. She had a black woman, ensemble comedic sketch comedy thing. And I enjoyed it. So, and I thought that was kind of funny when they did that. And I thought it was kind of a slick way of bringing in the light skin or the mixed and playing off of that a little bit. In fact, it reminded me in a positive way of the spook who sat by the door in that scene that I've been joking about lately, where the fair skin, straight hair. Well, actually, that scene was, well, ultimately his scene about, I am black, I'm born black. But the point of that was that the main character was putting together a light skinned crew of bank robbers who would be thought to be white under their masks, so that the authorities wouldn't know that this was part of the Black Revolution, which I thought tactically made sense. And I've always thought that I would sign up for that role, or I would have. I'm just an honest, law-abiding YouTuber professor at this point. But family man, father, and husband, and but at one point that would have been the fantasy. Sign me up for the light skin brigade to go in, and perform some undercover tasks for the struggle, for the people. So I did like that part. And it's also not gross. It's not overly sci-fi either. It's kind of cute. She holds her breath. She appears as mixed and can go shopping. Moore is the grating living embodiment of the delusions of the managerial artistic class. So, although I have argued in the past, and I think just off my own anecdotal experience, the opposite of that I've often felt that at particular moments of tension, of political tension in particular, the white gaze will turn the biracial, light-skinned, fair-skinned into, in their imagination, the darkest, most fearful black person. And that at that moment, they cease to be able to distinguish between complexions and only see the fear of the black insurgent. But okay. But I get the point that is made here and that was being made in the film, and largely agree. Lakeith Stanfield's supernatural side character is at least so gonzo you can't help but giggle at the strange and wet aside that begins with his characters reading Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. Again, I didn't get his character. I didn't really appreciate. I get, eventually I've read that, this was Keke Palmer's demon that she has to get away from. And but I just didn't think the character worked. It didn't help explain anything political or radical. And all it turned into was a cunnilingus joke at the end of the film. And all, and more power to, and I get the joke. Like why would a woman want to be with a man that can't go down on her because it will suck her soul out? I get it. But what does that have to do with creating a revolutionary consciousness? I don't know. And again, that scene, I just don't need that scene. I just don't ever need scenes like that. Isa Gonzalez is an eternally vaping retail worker saddled with the exposition about a fantastical teleportation device and how it relates to dialectical materialism. This is where I thought the movie completely got it wrong, and we'll come back to that in a little bit with something else. So and by the way, everybody, forgive me for dealing with this article so long. I just think it gives a good summary of both the film and some of my initial thoughts. There are a couple others I'm going to get to in much shorter form that speak specifically to some political points, and then I'll jump in with the chat and we can chop it up for a few minutes. And I also agree here that giving your weakest actor your most complex and stilted dialogue is definitely a choice as a filmmaker. I don't know if I would have said she's the weakest actress, but she just wasn't the one. And I just didn't think, but then again, I don't think the issue was the actor. It was the way that the device was meant to stand in for what should have been a better written story that explained what dialectical materialism is without it being a sort of exposition dump that uses shock sex scenes as a way that I'm sure Boots would like to argue is meant to help a popular audience, a mass audience, get the point, and I don't think it does. But Riley isn't interested in granting these figures lived-in or distinct characterization, instead providing spare traits to facilitate the plot and messaging. This is why the humor only intermittently lands, and why Poppy Liu as Jian Hu, a Chinese factory worker for Christie's company who explodes into the film with a teleportation device and a dream, has a plot line that doesn't quite work despite me enjoying the actor herself. The idea of showing cross-cultural worker solidarity and how community develops in the wake of struggle is a beautiful one, if it's built on detail and specificity. But you need the texture of life for such political ideas and narrative gambits to work. And I would forgive many, if not all, of the film's clumsy efforts if it's more successfully coalesced into what it is consistently trying to be, funny. And that's where I kind of disagree with this article. And when I first read this, I wanted the line to end with not funny, but radical or political. In other words, I would forgive many of what I feel are the film's clumsy efforts if it was consistently radically political and conveyed that in an interesting story, as opposed into shock and awe. What does it mean when a film such as I Love Boosters has good politics, but is at the end of the day artistically frustrating even on its own terms? And by good politics, I mean leftist ideals that carry hope for the future in this planet and humanity's potential to define itself by care rather than conquest. What does it even mean to try to create an anti-capitalist work within an artistic medium woefully bound to capital? Very good question. And why, again, I don't think that should be the goal, because it's not going to, it's not going to be allowed to come off. Can a film's intent be admirable, but its effects disappointing? Can its political objectives be worth celebrating, even as they're negated by basic storytelling failures? I personally need a film to function on the level of aesthetics and emotion first and foremost, and those aesthetics need to serve the story. It's not an impossible task. There are clearly leftist propagandist films I love artistically and politically. I would like to see these films. I actually started to watch A Night Full of Rain, but didn't get a chance to finish it before today, so maybe we will. But one of my favorite filmmakers is Marxist feminist Lena Wertmuller, whose 1970s art house films like A Night Full of Rain and Seven Beauties have in mind the fraught dynamics of gender relations, communism, and liberal feminism's limitations. We'll have to talk to Mtume and others about that. But what makes Wertmuller's films cast such a spell is that she gives her political ideas flesh. Her movies worked, and their politics bring up such heady discussions because it's in tandem with actor muses like Giancarlo Gianni. She demonstrated an interest in how these political ideas affect the art of living and how we love one another. I Love Boosters is clearly going for something more playful and surreal. But Riley's film only works in fits. Its stunning visual bravura can't distract from what's lacking within its film's arsenal of storytelling tools. And that's where I agree. In that same 1982 interview, Bambara finished her response by saying, "I think for any artist, your job is determined by the community you're identifying with. But in this country, we're not encouraged and equipped at any particular time to view things that way. And so the artwork or art practice that sells capitalist ideology is considered art, and anything that deviates from that considered political propaganda is considered political propagandist, polemical, didactic, strange, weird, subversive, or ugly." With all due respect to what has now been revealed to me by reading Gabriel Rockhill's book about the Frankfurt School, I do appreciate what I learned from them in grad school about the ability for the culture industries to produce a popular form of art that makes, to Mtume's point about third cinema, audiences recoil from third cinema. The very production outside of the institution of film that is telling stories with a certain politics different from what has been established as acceptable in the mainstream, as normal, and what has been imposed as what we should like, makes using that same system to produce its opposite impossible. So this is not so it's not that I'm saying Boots or anyone should be condemned for trying. I just think that we should be evolving movements in politics that make either those efforts moot, seen as unnecessary. I mean, this is even the point why I've been arguing around this Vernon philosophy, that if we have sort of, as I was arguing, an intellectual boycott, this idea that I know going in that the film I'm getting, this first cinema product, cannot provide me with the political inspiration that I want. That is at least a step ahead in, I would argue, protecting us from what are the claims of films like I Love Boosters, which is that you're getting a film made with a popular mass audience in mind, but with a radical politics that's going to move us in that direction. And I think that's the mistake. That's the false claim. It's the media equivalent to my argument around Black businesses. Setting up a Black business with the idea of individually doing something for yourself or some small part of the community is one thing. Promoting it as an idea of liberation for the whole is an entirely different animal. So just wrapping up here with this article, I could lay such complaints at Riley's feet and fall into the trap of Bambara's words illuminate. But that is what Riley is aiming for: blunt and unvarnished propaganda that entertains as a means to get people's soul in a game their skin has been in since birth. And again, while I agree and appreciate with that goal, I don't think the mechanism he has chosen can perform that task. Revolutions are made up of living and breathing and yearning and failing mortals. Without embodied individuals in your work, you can't make revolution feel real or possible, let alone irresistible. Ideas don't bleed and yearn, but people do. So again, that's from Vulture, Angelica J. Bastien. I Love Boosters is colorful, gonzo, and an absolute mess. It does summarize in some ways my thoughts about the film as sort of an introduction. And yeah. So folks, again, welcome, like, share, subscribe, support the platform however you would like. And again, welcome. All right. I'm not going to spend as much time with these other articles, but I do want to show a little bit from just a couple things I picked up from some other pieces. This is from the New York Times. By Sandra E. Garcia. What's the title of it? I guess I Love Boosters. Cast interview. So this is where they sat down with the cast. They took a bunch of pictures. And And there was just a couple of things I found interesting, I think, somewhere in here. So when asked, what was the initial question? How do you approach this material and look down the throat of capitalism and fashion while also being part of an industry driven by capitalist instincts? Liu said, maybe it's not dismantling the whole system. That can't be done necessarily in our lifetime or who knows how many lifetimes, but you can make the corner of your world a little bit better. And I thought I highlighted that because I think that this summarizes the limitations of politically of the film that we'll come to in just a minute. There is also a romance aspect in the movie. Lakeith Stanfield plays a somewhat vampiric love interest of Corvette. What significance did you find in the context of the movie's themes? And this is I was interested in because I was completely confused and bothered by that character. Kiki Palmer says, under capitalism, under feeling this pressure, we unfortunately are finding recognition in pain and suffering before we are in our actual embodied selves. I think sometimes these connections are unfortunately happening. They're not happening from a state of freedom. They're happening from a state of oppression. When somebody is meeting you at your lowest or you're unfulfilled, they're not really meeting you. She, Corvette, is afraid of him because he's validating the dark side of her. And I actually thought this was a good answer. I just don't think it's conveyed well in the film. And again, maybe this is just my bias against the science fiction and the particular way it was done in this film. But I don't think this registered. I don't think it was very clear. And I don't think that this point that Palmer is making was as readily available to the viewers as she might have or Boots might want. I thought this line was important and relates to my point about the Vernon philosophy when Gonzalez says you just want to be seen so badly. It's like this experience of trying to be seen and then revealing yourself, that act is the most revealing, and then someone sucking the life out of you. So again, referring to this Stansfield character where he's literally sucking the life out of women. But I thought this relates again to my Vernon philosophy point because it reflects how I think Boots wants people who are politicized and those who aren't to react to this film. That he knows we who want revolutions want to be seen, and we want our revolutions to be seen. The problem is that what we are seeing reflected back to us in these first cinema products is not what we are actually wanting, and it isn't feeding those actual desires. But again, even to the point that I think that they're making here about you want to be seen by people in a social life and in romantically perhaps, and they're just sucking the life out of you. I just think that there's other ways that it could have been done, especially in the context of a film that's supposed to be encouraging labor and political consciousness and radical movement building. I think there's a way to tell the story of a man sucking the life out of a woman without it being graphically sexual and without it involving sci-fi and demons and all of that. If it's told in the context of a real life story with plot and writing that's moving a more radical theme, I think it would be more effective. And then, by the way, as I, to the point of the funding, I think you also then can if you would have still gotten the 20 million, and that's the whole point, you could do more with the film and spend less on, graphics and do more to tell the story. But then again, I think that's part of the point. Then you're not going to get the funding for it. All right. Copy the link. Now in this, let's see, in this story from RogerEbert.com, which is a largely positive review. And I always joke, I don't think this is obviously written by Brandon Towns, but Roger Ebert, with his did he pass away? But he had a black wife. So I've always thought that I've always thought that with few exceptions, Roger Ebert says mostly good things about black films because he doesn't want to be seen as upsetting his wife. And I feel like the outlet sort of picked up on that, even without his direct involvement or even after his death. But here there was one part, let's see, this part here I wanted to highlight. With his latest release, I Love Boosters, a film exploring booster culture in the Black community and worker exploitation in the fashion industry, Riley continues to show moviegoers that the only way to challenge corporate power is with a global militant labor movement. Since power under capitalism comes from capital, by seizing the means of production, the working class can collapse the system under its own weight. And I read this and I said, yeah, he might want us to get that point. And you may have picked up that he wants us to get that point, but I don't think that point is very well made in the film. And because, as I think is this the article that makes this article no, there's two more. One makes it more clearly than another, but the point is, I don't think the film does that. I don't think the film properly shows us the power that comes from seizing the means of production, or how the working class can collapse the system. And the short summary, the point is that the film ends with an ill-defined, vague, amorphous strike, not an organized movement with clear clarity of demands, and certainly no victory, showing what a world might look like when workers actually seize the means of production. And again, if you're doing all this sci-fi stuff and you're able to create slanted worlds and colorful this and demons and all this, why can't we see what the world looks like when workers actually win? It's like, why is the so-called victory in the film so limited? In this New Yorker article, let's see, what did I pull from this one here? Let's see. Let me skip it to where best chance. Okay. So I noted here, Riley saw boosters as his best chance to infiltrate the mainstream. And this is sort of the point I'm getting at, that I think is the conundrum. He'd spent decades as a critic's darling, first in music and then in film and TV. In Oakland, he was perfectly in sync, a Marxist bohemian auteur virtuoso whose class war themes were native to the culture. Now his goal was to blast boosters far beyond that radius, turning it into a summer blockbuster, a popcorn hit with a revolutionary heart. And that, to me, says everything that I think is wrong with that approach, with that as a goal. What happened to my spot here? I don't think that can happen. A summer blockbuster popcorn hit with a revolutionary heart. What do we think would be the result of that film, of such a film? And Perna, let's see. Boosters had taken a wide path to development 2 years ago when Annapurna, the indie production company that distributed Sorry to Bother You, approached Riley about moving forward with his second film. He was feeling bruised from his chaotic production of Virgo, which had undergone painful cuts only to sink beneath the waves of Amazon's algorithms. So again, he's already, this is him talking about how he already tried that with I'm a Virgo. I will allow for you to cut episodes and cut this and cut that so that it will appease your politics, all for it to be barely seen. It's described in this article, I think as was the word flop. But so the idea was somehow that he was going to come back with Annapurna this time and not have to suffer what Amazon put him through. But as it says here, Annapurna pushed for the more. So wait, no, I forgot. I didn't finish reading this part. So he struggles to do the Amazon thing with I'm a Virgo. His priority was developing a different screenplay. So when Annapurna said, we want to work with you on your next film, he said, well, cool, I'm developing a screenplay titled The Electric Spanking of War Babies, a sci-fi adventure inspired. It's inspired by the wisdom of Parliament Funkadelic. That sounds dope. Free your mind and your ass will follow. He was also hoping to adapt the playwright Anne Washburn's feral and philosophical dark comedy, Mr. Burns, a post-electric play. Annapurna pushed for the more accessible boosters. And I need to just jump over here to
Message.
So Annapurna said, we got you on your next film, but not them. We want the more accessible boosters. A heist film he had on the back burner. Riley was game. By the way, I meant to mention this earlier. When you read the lyrics to I Love Boosters, that's why I was saying earlier, I think my favorite Mutiny and many others of his tracks would have been better to start as a foundation for a film. I Love Boosters is really a very apolitical song that just praises boosters who helped him stay fly as a poor kid who couldn't afford clothes, which is a dope concept. But you could easily see why Annapurna would say, yeah, that's much more accessible. Riley was game, particularly after the executive sweetened the deal by offering him the chance to work with Michaela Cole, the Ghanaian British auteur behind HBO's I May Destroy You. I like that show, actually, by the way. I did like that. Coel read Riley's script and agreed to play Corvette, although she was concerned that her accent would be an impediment. At the time, she was struggling with writer's block, and Riley advised her to write for 4 hours a day, whatever results. The methods worked so well that she completed her own TV series, which she then stepped away from Boosters to make. I like her, by the way, Michaela Cole. I don't think I'm pronouncing her name right, but I actually like her as an actress, and would like to see more from her. And yeah. All right. When Riley was ready to shoot Boosters, Neon stepped up as co-producer, offering Riley the significant budget he needed. This time, the director was determined not to cut corners, to make a film as maximalist as his imagination. All right. So they stepped in with the money he needed. What was my next part? Too often radical artists. His boots and the fly colors. Let's see. So for some reason I could not highlight, let's see, too often. Okay, here we go. So too often radical artists were forced by the market to speak in code, he told me. So the author here, by the way, followed Boots around for I think like a year, putting this whole story together. Too often radical artists were forced by the market to speak in code, he told me, the way George Lucas had when he made Star Wars instead of the film he had originally envisaged, a Vietnam War movie from the POV of the Viet Cong. Riley was occasionally dinged online for working with Amazon or with Annapurna, which was founded by Megan Ellison, the daughter of the right-wing titan Larry Ellison. Riley had no tolerance for that critique. In his view, there was no clean way under capitalism to make art for a mass audience. And if you don't reach everyone, what's the point? And that is, again, where I have to highlight my fundamental disagreement with Boots and many others. Because the question I think should be asked differently. If you can reach a mass audience, if you can reach everyone, then what's the point? The apparatus, the funding, the advertising, the theaters, the material mechanics of the apparatus won't allow it. The immaterial preconditioning of an audience to not appreciate, understand, interpret, know where to go to build upon those ideas will be the other sort of foundational barrier to success in reaching a mass audience with a radical message. Which, by the way, is immediately subsumed beneath all of the other nonsense that is out there, that even if someone does see it, even if someone is somewhat radicalized or moved, they will be dragged right back in to the safe confines of liberalism by all the other media being imposed on them. So this is that conundrum that I keep, again, going back to Glenn Ford's Black Agenda Report approach to journalism, is what I think should be the approach to all media, cultural production, academic, scholarship, et cetera, and so forth. Again, this is the same critique I've levied against my own work on buying power. I intentionally wrote the book as quote unquote liberal as I possibly could, thinking I would do better to reach a larger mass Black audience. And what was the result? In many ways, to the extent it reached a mass audience, that audience was through preconditioning, imposed psychological warfare, propaganda, counterinsurgency, through the mass amounts of countervailing argumentation to either dismiss me without reading the book, or to have the book be limited in its impact or its analysis or its argument, because I weakened it thinking I'd reach a larger audience. Boots clearly does the same thing with weakening radical political messaging, both I think with the story as it ends, and we'll come back to that again in a moment, but also in this sci-fi sensationalist horror genre style of storytelling. The goal has to be to produce the analysis and the work and the media that targets those already doing the work, or close enough maybe politically on the fence, who would actually be moved into more radical militant political spaces by the art, the media. It should be created to inspire those communities, to inform those communities, to teach those communities, and then to condition as much of us and others as well to accept forms of media, in this case film, that are not going to look like what we're seeing on the so-called big screen. Because we're not going to get on the big screen the kinds of films that we think we want. And when we think we do, they are not. Let's see. Propaganda. Let's see. All art is political. Riley often says, whether it claims to be or not, superhero stories are propaganda. Sitcoms sell middle class norms. Of course, he's right about that. The next day, Riley and I sat down at the Austin Proper Hotel, whose lobby was full of Silicon Valley types heading to the tech events at South by Southwest. He was excited to speak to college students again. He'd had to retire one of his old speeches, which denounced propaganda for teaching poor people to obey authority, after placing it in the mouth of a communist organizer in Virgo. Events had overtaken Riley's most outlandish plots. 3 years after the show aired, a militarized police force, ICE, was poised to repress and criminalize political dissent. And this is sort of, to the extent I understood, I didn't fully understand what was meant by this line, but to the extent I think I did, the point that I'm getting at is that I was just making is made here again. You got a line about the police in the mouth of a communist organizer in the show Virgo, but the show got suppressed. Amazon buried it. And then in real life, we got ICE. In other words, attempting to make art that would target a mass audience with a radical message is suppressed by the very apparatus you're trying to use so that the real life militarized police force can continue to do what it can do without criticism to a certain extent, and then which ultimately again undermines the idea that you're going to produce media that's going to change the material conditions. The opposite is true. It is kind of like the materialist argument. Consciousness is an emanation of material reality. So you're not going to produce an unreal, immaterial media product that's going to change the material conditions. The material conditions have to change first. That will then produce a new form of media and storytelling and a new audience. But as it says here, even so, Riley felt encouraged. He told me, I made this movie before the Minnesota general strike. In late January, in sub-zero temperatures, hundreds of businesses and dozens of unions shut down to protest ICE Operation Metro Surge. And arguably, the general strike is more radical than the one in the film, It was people withholding labor in order to change a policy that didn't necessarily even affect them. And I read this and I said, you're making my point. Real life political struggle, even in his own words, is more radical than the film he made, which he's saying he made to reach a mass audience to move them in that direction. So one of my notes here was to myself was I would prefer that this is why I'm arguing it would have made more sense for him to focus his energy and effort on producing media and content for people already in those politicized spaces to spur them to greater and higher levels of struggle. It's almost like he's acknowledging that the people were already beyond where he was with his film. So I even told myself I was supposed to read that line. Arguably, the general strike is more radical than the one in the film, it was people withholding their labor in order to change policy that didn't even affect them.
Message.
And then my note says, and why we don't need this film to help radicalize people. He could have done more, doing a more radical version of what Keke Palmer did with her YouTube series. That was the note I made. He could have made a more radical Southern fried rice for YouTube that targeted people in the streets or already prone to be in the streets or who need a radical message to further enhance their political consciousness and so on and so on and so on. All right, where was this part he says about Mamdani? He says in here, Mamdani posted counter propaganda. What was it? Nope. Mamdani. Where's the other one? Oh, okay, right here. 3 weeks before Boosters was to open, New York's Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani declined to attend the Met Gala. I agree with that, which was being sponsored by the Amazon founder and Washington Post destroyer Jeff Bezos. Mamdani posted counter propaganda. I don't know if he destroyed the Washington Post. Let's not do too much and suggest that that thing was doing any real good work beforehand. Let's not go too far with that. I'm sure he has not helped it, but let's not act like it was out here doing the work of the people. Mamdani posted counter propaganda, glamour shots of artisans, retail workers, and delivery people who anchor New York's fashion industry, from true love found in the picket line to a free tailoring school outside of Brooklyn basement. This is Riley's approach in action, lifting the spotlight away from the hypnotic parade to the workers who made it possible. And again, I noted, again, I'm not a supporter of Mamdani, but I thought this was, the article is actually making the point I'm making, contradicting what it's claiming to be saying about Riley. In other words, my point is that Riley should have done the cinematic version of Mamdani not going to the Met Gala. He should have said, I'm not taking the 20 million from Megan Ellison. I'm going to announce that I'm not taking that kind of money. I'm not going to work with these people anymore. I'm going to find a way to make a movie that does what Mamdani did here. I'm going to make a lesser budgeted film that focuses on the artisans, retail workers, delivery people who anchor the fashion industry. And again, Rainbow Girls, I think, does much more of that than Boosters. But it was also optimistic, an attempt to help audiences imagine a better future. In the cut we watched at South by Southwest, Violetta, the left-wing stoner trying to unionize Metro designers, gave a speech in which she described the way social progress ascends like a spiral through contradiction and clashes. Riley imagined his film structure that way, he told me. It followed a pattern that didn't exist yet. So, all right, one more, and then I will jump into chat, because this is the article that actually comes closest to summarizing some of my thoughts on the film and where it falls short. Christina Kupencho Frolic in Communist Revolution. Film review, I love Boosters. The irony is that I love Boosters itself trips up at being art and slips towards being a textbook in a colorful disguise. I think that's more a paradox than irony, but you know, whatever. All right, let me just skip to the parts that the plot screeches to a dead stop. So this is one of the issues that I had and agree with. The plot screeches to a dead stop for a union activist to explain the dialectical materialism powering the device. Remember, as I said earlier, that she gets this device that, with different settings, is supposed to be able to demonstrate all of the contradictions and the processes of dialectical materialism. And I agree. And frankly, it's bad. Instead of actually explaining, I texted people after, I was like, is this explaining dialectical materialism? I don't feel like. Instead of actually explaining dialectical materialism, the character repeats this misconception that it's the same as Aristotelian dialectic. Thesis, antithesis equals synthesis. A mullet is used to clumsily illustrate synthesis, and the changes the device accelerates happen linearly rather than through sharp turns and explosions, i.e. dialectically. I thought, again, it was another exposition dump from a character who may have not been the best actor to pull it off, and does this thing of reducing dialectical materialism to thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and then demonstrating that by having the character she's talking to and all of us witness a quick cut to her parents mid aggressive hot sex, with the argument being that the thesis and antithesis of the parents coming together, pun intended, produces the synthesis of the child. And I obviously, as one not wanting to see those kinds of scenes at all, also just don't think that helps in explaining dialectical materialism. What ends up happening, and I think it happened in the theater, I will say that unfortunately, I was watching this movie with my oldest daughter, which produced a couple of very uncomfortable moments. But it didn't help her understand dialectical materialism as a non-expert in that way of thinking, myself included, it didn't help her to understand. And we had a long conversation about that. We're having ongoing conversations about that. And in fact, by the way, you know, I did say to her, I mentioned this before, I did say to her after that the demon sucking scene, that I get that there was an attempt at a joke by the film's end about the importance of cunnilingus in a relationship, but I really didn't like and we talked a little bit about this with her. I didn't like the association with such negativity when in what is ultimately a rare scene of a woman enjoying oral sex or having an orgasm. I used to show the documentary Not Yet Rated. This film is Not Yet Rated, which is a great documentary about the history of the film system and the rating system. And one of the many points that are made in the film is the history of sex scenes in US film. And they go back to a film in the 70s with Jane Fonda receiving oral sex from a character in a wheelchair to show in a well-shot scene a woman having an orgasm, which you almost never see on screen. And in fact, they interview women who have been told in the films that they're making, you can't show this woman having an orgasm or touching herself, even though they do make the point in the documentary of showing all those, you know, silly teenage films where one of those American Pie films where they in the scene they use in the documentary is when the kid is exploded onto the roof via an orgasm or something like that. The woman is like blasted to this enormous orgasm from a boy, but a woman quietly touching herself or just seeing her face enjoy an orgasm, that's too much for film. That's X-rated. We can't, NC-17, nobody's theater is going to run that. And then here we finally get some discussion of this and see a woman enjoying herself. Admittedly, I didn't need to be sitting there watching it. I definitely didn't need to be sitting there watching it with my daughter, but I just was like, you know, at least, okay. I mean, but to have it turn into what it turned into, I was like, wow, again, the rarest of moments to see that. And it turns into, she dies. She loses her soul. It's like that sucks, pun intended. But to the point being made here, I just didn't, it doesn't help explain what dialectical materialism is. A sci-fi accelerationism machine is simply a poor choice as a device to illustrate dialectical materialism because it necessarily removes the subject from the material forces acting upon it. This isn't just bad theory, it has narrative consequences. The climactic strikes pop into existence magically and so feel hollow and surface level. And that to me...
Now listen! That's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
That for me was as much of a perfect summary of my problem with the film as anything. We get a sensationalist presentation of the politics, exposition dumps, and a strike that pops into existence out of nowhere and doesn't even do much. With a literal and then as they write here, with a literal accelerationism machine on hand, we have to wonder, why would a communist filmmaker stop at a strike? Why not go for full revolution? In the denouement, Riley gestures toward the strikes, inspiring a broader worldwide movement, but it's all very vague. Corvette doesn't end up a revolutionary. She just runs a clothing swap. There's very little that a common trade union bureaucrat wouldn't agree with. Communist propaganda, it's weak sauce. And that's exactly what I thought. I was thinking, why you got this device, you got a sci-fi world, you got a $20 million budget. Let's see some stuff. We don't even see a CEO get smacked from the man that wrote How to Kill My Landlord. We don't even see somebody get smacked. much less lined up and forced into redistribution. I was like, what's going on? All right, everybody. So those are my thoughts. We're going to, at least some of them, my initial thoughts, more tomorrow on Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media. The link's already in the show description to that one. So you're all set up, and I'm happy to jump into the chat if anybody wants to join me. I'm even going to drop the studio link in here and hang out for a few minutes. You can jump up here and offer your thoughts and response if you like, or just put a comment, a question, critique, query, conundrum in the chat. But what I am going to have to do first is take a the quickest of bio breaks. So don't go anywhere. Get your questions and stuff lined up if you have them, or jump into the studio if you like. And I will be right back. Yeah, man. He talking about. What are you talking about? Let me get this branch real quick. He talking about tree line streets. It's my street. He over here on his microphone talking trash. I'm gonna get this branch real quick. Let me just get this branch. Let me just hold on. Let me get this branch. Put it over here real quick. He over here talking trash. This is my neighborhood. Yeah, hold it right here. Hold on. Put it right here. Hold on. I'm gonna get it right here right quick. Get this branch real quick, and then I'm gonna come back and deal with him and his broadcasting. These my streets. And hold on. I can't get it. Let me just. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. I'm gonna go back over here real quick. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna hold it and put it right here right quick. Yep. Wait. These tree line streets. This is my streets. He's over here talking trash. And outside, I'm making noise outside his window. Wait till I get this branch situated, then I come back and wait. No, I'm gonna wait. If I want the branch over here, I get the wait. No, hold on, I'm gonna put it up here real quick. No, hold on. What am I doing? Wait, hold on. Let me go over here real quick. Wait, try to put it up here real quick. Hold on. Wait, let me swing over here. Put it down. Wait. Get these tree line streets. It's my street. I'm gonna put it over here. Watch me put this branch over here. Put this branch in the corner. Put this branch over. Wait, what? Huh? What? Put this branch over here. Try to get these tree line streets. It's my streets. Now come down. What'd you say? Nah, he over here talking trash. Now it's my streets. This is my branch. This is my tree. It's my streets. Do what I want to do on this tree. What? Drop this. Don't make me drop this branch. Don't make me get this branch over here. Put this. Once I get this. What'd you say? What? All right, everybody. Welcome back. Please like, share, subscribe. Put this in your socials. Invite others to join you. If you're watching this later, drop a comment. Sophia, I see you in the back. If you're intending to come up, I don't know if you were going to turn your camera up. Nope, you left. Okay, perhaps. Does anybody? Okay, so let's see. Let me see what's going on in the chat here. How might revolutionary art and film draw upon archetypal images of kinship, labor, freedom, and collective struggles to help workers imagine alternatives to exploitation and what limits? So I do hope we can get this film festival, this Ma'afa Nakba idea off, because I'm very interested in Mtume's arguments around the creation of third cinema and the creation of new audiences. Ah, my man.
What up?
Speak of the not the devil, but speak of the heroic African.
Sorry, I'm on the street. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, everything, you sound good. What's up, my man?
Good. I got a quick 10, 15, so I could talk real quick.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to see all of the live, so forgive me if I repeat anything or anything. But yeah, I can share thoughts.
Please, no, and,
If,
and,
if,
and any
if they
repetition is going to
dovetail.
be good. Yeah, yeah, it's going. It'll be good.
Yeah,
What?
I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Oh, I missed your text. I see you. My bad. You text me.
Yeah,
What's up?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. No, say what you got. You use your time as you want.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a way with Boots that I feel like there's two conversations that are definitely connected. But I think there's two conversations with him. One is the actual material, how the movie is produced, and what is also then what is produced. And of course, yes, they are connected. But I think sometimes separating them out to then show like the kind of tentacles of how they kind of like, co-constitute each other, I think is really important. And they also, to me, show really kind of honestly, I just think it exposes the entire project he's been working on, to be honest with you. So I'll start with the movie and then I'll probably go to like the production, partly because I don't have notes with me. So like I'm kind of going off of my memory of the movie. And yeah, like the thing with boosters is I go straight to the political. Like it's an economism argument. Right, it's if you think about like Lenin's "What Is to Be Done," right, and when he argues against trade unionism and trade union economism politics, Bush is just making an economism argument. And it's funny because someone said this to me, and I won't say their name because I don't know if they want to get like dragged in the mud of talking about Boots. So I'm just not going to say it. They said it to me about "Sorry to Bother You," which I did not particularly care for as a film personally, but so I didn't really do an analysis of it. So, but he said, "Yeah, that's in Sorry to Bother You also," and I was like, okay. So when I watched this, it was very evident in this film to me because, like you said, like when the acceleration happens, what is the acceleration to like protests and signs, right? He never questioned state power in the movie, right? This isn't State and Revolution, right? This is not that. He's not questioning the taking of state power. There really is no question of the state within it. If anything, it could be interpreted with the film that he has problems with states in general, in particular his how he looks at China. As a kind of like China ends up looking like a kind of perverted exploited workers state, right? It's a really like, and it's funny. I threw
I
that
didn't
to a
even think
couple.
about that.
I threw that to a couple of people, I know on the Marxist left who've seen it and were like, yeah, I have that same perception, right? Because if you look at the film, there is no Chinese state established, right? There is like these like characters who seem to work with Demi Moore's character, right? So by eliminating the state, it becomes what we kind of have been thinking about China from like the 90s, right? That it was like the place where all the exploitation happened. It's America's kind of, factory that makes all their goods, right? And he definitely likes to think about their workers in I guess in a quote unquote positive way. But, and I put those in quotations, but it's a way that he doesn't see it as a proletariat state, right? He doesn't see it as the growing of a dictatorship of the proletariat within the film, right? And from knowing a little bit about Boots's tendency politically, that kind of adds up if you look at the parties that he was in.
Oh man, I completely missed that point. All I got to was I was frustrated with the limitations put on this worker solidarity, this international solidarity. Like it doesn't really make the point clear enough, and it doesn't. But the film definitely doesn't say anything about China. It doesn't say anything about a communist revolutionary China or anything to explain how that movement has been reduced to being the factory workers of the world in many cases. Like that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah. I mean, and it's part of like the political tendency that he was originally in. I don't know where Boots's tendencies lay this way, which I always find a little bit weird because like he speaks a lot about communism, but the way he speaks about it, I find to be in kind of broad strokes, which I think also explains like his like rapid exposition of shit like dialectical materialism. And, and then in the film, and I would need someone to check this for me. How many times is the word communism and socialism actually used? Because I don't remember. I know. I'm sure it is.
I don't think at all.
So,
Actually, I don't think at all.
see, this is the thing. I'm trying to be generous.
Are we wrong about that? Wait a minute.
I
Who
need
knows?
someone
Wait,
to check me. Someone check me. But I don't remember. I want to
How
think
does-
that I
how does-
forgot.
how does Jared Ware find all those scripts all the time? How does he always have the script?
You can find them probably out there. I'm sure it's probably out there if it's not out there soon. I mean, Boots likes the merchandise. He'll be selling it soon. You know what I'm saying? He likes the extra merchandise. He's gonna do the Spike Lee thing, and have the like I Love Boosters scripts with like notes about the making of it, so forth and so on, that all come from his perspective. Yeah, and then like when it comes to the filmmaking, what I kind of said to someone, I was like, I kind of go back to Eisenstein, where like Eisenstein talked a lot about how you deliver a kind of cinematic invitation to kind of elicit emotions within people. And Boots is kind of, to me, caught up in content creation. I think he has a kind of, honestly, a very vulgar and low opinion of his audiences, to be honest with you, because he feels like he has to like flash them, excite them, give them all of this like extra kind of like pizzazz, rather than just give them something that is relatable, understandable, crafted in a way that shows a progression or a digression of society, and shows like what will it take to make revolution, or so forth and so on. Instead, he has to do all of these like hyper like metaphors that don't really add up. I argue that his dialectical materialism shit is more Hegelian than it actually is Marxist, because it's all idealist conceptions of metaphysical kind of makings, which is totally Marxist criticism of Hegel. So I'm like, this is some Hegelian shit, which is like really weird, right? And like the kind of synthesis antithesis thing is like a kind of vulgarity of it. It's like I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but like there's a lot more to it than that, right? But he has to use, he wants to use it to kind of make flash, right? Because he thinks that audiences need flash and pizzazz. And to me, that's a very degraded way of looking at audiences, to me. Like he needs to give them sex and demons and accelerators and then superheroes and then shootouts at the end. And like that to me is just like, you don't have a high opinion of the people who are watching your films. You don't think that they could actually sit there and digest a simple story about a group of young women who were criminals, quote unquote, right, within the eyes of society, and that they could come to a realization that their position through capital within civil society, right, has put them in this position, and exactly they're the exploited people, and they need to expropriate the expropriators, right? He can't do a simple story about that shit. You don't need all this other shit, right? And then someone from China happens to be there, they work together and they create something and they do it. But then the ending, I was like, if you're going to accelerate the contradictions, I'm sorry, the accelerating of the contradictions to me is not going to be protest signs. It's going to be taking state power. Right?
That part did stand out to me. I was like, that's it?
That's it.
And then to the point of one of the articles, like Keke Palmer, all she does is get another job, basically, or whatever. She moves up in the fashion industry or some shit. I was like, what?
Right. And my thing with that thing is like, okay, if he wanted to maybe state, well, two things. If he wanted to maybe state that this is a stage and everything, right, then make that clear, saying like, all right, there's a higher stage of the revolution. We're not there yet, but we're going to figure it out. So it's like, and you as the audience, you need to go figure out the highest stage. I could actually sit with that. Like there's theories around it that's effective. It's like Brecht would do things like that, right? Because you have to make the revolution. I can't be visually determinist. But no, he makes it like they don't accomplish the shit. Everybody's striking around the world, right? And also the capitalist is still alive. I'm just like, wait a minute. So when they did the accelerator gun,
and
I was waiting for Demi Moore to get hit with it. And like, just like either like vanish, be in some kind of like, I don't know, socialist prison system, re-education, I don't know what. But she's just now just doing negotiation deals with her workers. So I was like, oh, this is just trade unionism. It's just trade unionist politics. It's not it's not interested in revolution. And then this to me makes sense why it would get $20 million. why the Ellisons would be interested in doing this, because I'm not saying that strikes are things that they want, or that they want to kind of, they definitely don't want to like negotiate better deals. But like, if it's between that, this is Lenin's argument. If it's between that and literally the workers organizing to basically like seize the means of production and take state power and throw out the capitalists and expropriate the expropriators, come on, they're gonna choose other shit. Like, this is what's gonna
but
happen.
I'm thinking from the perspective of the ruling elite, even a cinematically depicted strike that again pops up out of nowhere I'd be fine with that, because you're thinking, if this is the culmination, if this is the extent, what is the threat? Because in real life, as Josh Lord and we've already pointed out, people have already gotten to that stage in some cases, and it's being sort of dissipated and mitigated and suppressed. So it's not like people are going to watch this film and be with clarity moved in that direction, because if anything, they're going to think somewhere else out of nowhere this will pop up. I don't even have to do anything.
Right. And to add to your point, this is also to me the pernicious thing of like using the kind of whole superheroes and we need these essential singular heroes kinds of like characterizations, right? Because he's still in talking about a people's movement, the fact that he needs to focus on special individuals is also a trap. Right? I'm not saying that you don't have charismatic individuals, so forth and so on. That's not the calculus that I'm saying here. What I'm saying is like he's still using a very bourgeois story structure of the hero, right, needs to reconcile with themselves and they become the person. Like there's no real study of how this person, like how they came to consciousness is kind of flimsy. Do they really actually come to consciousness?
No, I mean, some of the critiques I was going through, and I agree, they don't. It's not that, it's because again, the end result is an elevated position within the fashion industry. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
But I'll say one other thing is like, and to me, this kind of reflects whether it's conscious or unconscious is Boots's, I think, self-reflection. Because he sees himself as like one of these. Like he was a person who was out there as a hustler and he's come to a certain consciousness. So he is going to be the person that's going to somehow through movies galvanize an acceleration of, through movies, an acceleration of the contradictions, right? And through a mass kind of media project that he had, which is why he's like, yeah, everybody has to go see it. Get everyone to see it because it'll accelerate the contradictions. And then suddenly, we'll all be galvanized to get better deals and we can go. And, and it's like, I mean, like, bro, I would need precedent. I would need historical precedent on how it's been like that. And honestly, like let's just keep it real. Like none of these revolutions have been successful without the taking of state power. And the fact that the state is not questioned in the film at all shows you, right? Because that's what they fear. Like they don't fear, like you said, they don't fear that part. It more annoys them, the economism thing. It annoys them and gets on their fucking nerves, right? But they fear, like, what if they actually took state power?
But look, I was looking again, and you got to help me find this thing where you broke down in one of your Patreon Within Our Gates podcasts, you broke down, and I thought I had the note somewhere. I cannot find it. You broke down these steps you think need to be taken in developing a third cinema. Yeah. And I went back and I was listening to another one of your discussions with Sudeep, and it wasn't in that one either. So there's two of them I've listened to with Sudeep that I thought had it, but it's not in there. But where you did what you all were talking about at one point, you oh damn, I just lost my thought. What were you just now saying? Oh my God.
Taking a state power. I think I was saying someone in the chat can remember.
Yeah, state power. But you all said, and I just listened to it this morning. You said
third cinema, making a third cinema. You were saying the steps that are needed.
it'll come back. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just lost.
Yeah.
Damn, I hate when that happened. But
Yeah,
it was
same.
anyway. It was damn it.
I was talking about Boots. I was talking about this also being Boots reflecting what he thinks is going to accelerate the contradictions and make revolution happen by him. Like this is the movie. This movie can do it.
Yeah.
His kind of faith in like the large mass media apparatus. It's like a really weird, I think.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with that. I can't think
vulgarized
what I was
understanding
gonna say, but yeah.
of like agitation. Like he thinks he like, and this is the thing that like I think there's always been like a quibble that I've had with people who really believe in the mass media space as like an agitational platform. And I'm not saying that it can't be, but like, look, the thing that we always have to remember is if you accelerated the contradictions of agitation on mass media, they're gonna cut that shit off. Let's just be real. Right? Like, come on, man. Like that's that. Now you're not being a materialist, right? You're not actually looking at the material reality of how mass media works, right? And all those types of things. Literally, they do have a switch.
That's what it was. You were talking about because it reminded me. I've talked a lot about that character Nick Hanauer, and you were the billionaire who a couple of years ago was making the rounds in media, basically. And you all were. This is the point you were talking about, that from the point of the ruling elite, they're looking for safety valve releases. How do we stop them from picking up the pitchforks? So if we can, if we can allow them to sort of unconsciously blow off some steam while watching something that's not ultimately threatening in its messaging, that's perfect. So everything from the lack of state focus to the trade unionism to the poor explanation of dialectics to the out of nowhere emergence of a strike that doesn't lead to real shifts in power. They're like, this is perfect, because people will, if they see the film at all, which is itself a struggle. If they see it at all, they will do what a lot are being encouraged to do. They will project onto it that it's done some magically wonderful thing, and at no point will they be moved into something that threatens we in the ruling elite. And then, by the way, we have 10 million other media products to saturate them with, even if they do get moved by the film.
And you know what to add, and it's gonna be like my last point. I'm gonna have to run, but this to add to that, because now Keke Palmer, Demi Moore, Lakeith Stanfield are now associated as some kind of champions of working class revolution, right? So because of that, you're able to get a vulgarized, diminished version of revolutionary politics. And then the fact that they get associated with it, people who don't have the consciousness that is necessary to make revolution, they're going to be looking towards Keke Palmer and Demi Moore and so forth and so on as, as people who they could trust, right? Because you got Keke Palmer up here talking about, she made some statement about like, I believe in this and that, and like I'm working class and da-da-da. She's saying all these types of stuff. And it's like, oh man, like the politics are like all over. Right. And now you get them as associating that it just vulgarizes the argument even more. And it actually does more. It does more to destroy what could be possible than it does anything to promote. Right. What could be possible. And it's in that way, it's you can maybe call it counterinsurgent, whatever you want to call it. It is that kind of project. And the last thing I'll say to this point, this is where like, I still would have problems with it. But if Boots was doing this and he was creating some kind of infrastructure for real radical films to be made, I would still have problems with this movie. But if he was saying, all right, this is necessary for me to do this, but I'm going to build this infrastructure where a real radical shit could happen, people could kind of go off script and make something happen, I'd be willing to be in more conversation with him. But he's not doing that. There is no evidence that I've seen, and if Boots does watch this or anything like that, I would, but also don't think he probably cares, because he also has take a lot of shots at leftist cinema. He has deliberately done this online, on people's podcasts. He says, I don't make movies for communists, which is like, it's like, Third Cinema didn't do it either, bro. They were trying to raise national consciousness of people who weren't communists and into national liberation. That's a total like vulgarization that everyone who made leftist films only made them for leftists. That's actually some shit that bourgeois people say, and it's really fucked up. Actually, I think as like a statement, but. Yeah, like if he was doing something like some side project, I'd be willing to kind of be a bit more. But he's kind of going on like, I'm the single man and you got to support me. I'm the dude. I'm the communist revolution in movies, and I'm like, first of all, your model is not, it can't be replicated, right? It can't be replicated. If we could make like Boots Riley's all through this stuff and all do this, okay, maybe, but we can't do that, right? That's not possible. But also what you're making, right? And you're not funneling that back down to the people. But this is like a longer conversation.
And we'll have more of them. And I appreciate you. I definitely appreciate you. And to the person that made that comment, I did not break down those 3 steps to Third Cinema. Mtume has done that. And we just got to make time.
I think I know. It's the episode.
Piece.
It's the questions episode, I think, that I did. When I took some questions. I think it's the second one. I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
Well, we need to get that out here. Like I need to have it in front of me so we can but anyway, now man, thank you very much.
Yes.
And look forward to more, man. Appreciate
I'm gonna watch the rest of this later, and then we should talk some more. I probably have some other thoughts that I'm gonna be mad that I forgot that I wrote
absolutely down. There's gonna be more. This ain't it. All right, my man. Thank you very much.
Peace
everybody. And please, you gotta everybody sign up for Mtume's Patreon. He drops a lot of gems there, and and make sure you've tapped in over there if you haven't already, because obviously it's dope. All right, Dre, let's my bad. Here we go. What's up, man? Welcome. Can you hear me?
What's poppin'?
What's happening?
What up? Is my shit froze? Oh,
you're not frozen here.
I'm like, did my shit freeze? Nothing much. Yeah, I just wanted to come here, for a quick second. Shout out to Mtume for coming through. I really feel like Boots is the Spike Lee of Tyler Perry's, in that he is very heavy-handed with the way in which he presents his films. Because even if you look at the character like Demi Moore in the slanted house, like the slanted buildings, that was supposed to be made after the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right?
Yeah.
And so it being made after the Leaning Tower of Pisa is supposed to put in your head like, oh, Italy is supposed to be the high fashion capital of everything. It's supposed to be the greatest thing ever, right? As you in that building.
Okay, I didn't catch that. All right.
As you in that building, realizing like, okay, that was the point of that building. It was supposed to be the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So since we know that Italy is supposed to be the representation of high fashion, blah, 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 while you were in that building, they were explaining Demi Moore's backstory. As they were explaining Demi Moore's backstory, they were giving you the most high level. Her daddy was a scientist, plastic surgeon. Demi Moore's a 15-year-old genius, MIT. She discovered some new way to do math, all types of shit. She backed away from all of that to get into fashion. She was talking about reimagining the reality of things. And in her moving up in the world, her moving up in the world in the fashion industry, he exposed something that I thought he was going to lean into more with the absurdist way in which he was doing it, with the campy way in which he was explaining her. When it said Demi Moore was like 15 and the guy that she got with from, I think, Chanel was a grown-ass man. Like the person that brought her into fashion was an adult. So she was groomed into that. And as it was getting to it, I'm like, damn, like, okay, so we're going with what a lot of the fashion world looks like. It's people who are very self-aggrandizing. So the idea that she's some MIT, I created new math person, I thought that was like a kick at, like, oh yeah, they think they're hot shit because they can, put some clothes together. So I'm like, all right, Boots, we going somewhere with this. And then I'm hearing like, the $10,000 suits. I'm like, okay, because you're playing into the whole idea that this shit don't really mean nothing. the Leaning Tower of Pisa, like she's full of herself. But then for it to literally devolve into actual meat suits, it's like, fam, this is the same problem you had in Sorry to Bother You. Why would you go from us understanding, like, I'm not dumb. Like, I went to school. I went to college for like a day, but I went to school. So why would you explain to me in Sorry to Bother You in this film, because they both have the same problem, where you're giving me this absurd, extra abstract way to look at things. I'm picking up what you're putting down, and then you be like, wait a minute, I still don't think you get it. Here, horses, here, meat suit. It's like, fam, no. And then
I agree. That
materialism. You basically infantilize the black characters. Like, you infantilize the black characters. You made it so these characters were just boosting. So then that means Keke Palmer squatting in that chicken shop doesn't mean anything besides Keke Palmer squatting in that chicken shop. All she wants to do is make a nice dress, but she's squatting in a chicken shop. So now it's just offensive. Like, now it's not a call to anything. It's not like, damn, hard times, like fast food, fast fashion, all these things. Now it's just, black in chicken shop. Yeah, it goes so that's my issue with him. He goes nowhere fast. What the fuck?
No, I think there's some delay, but I with us, but I do appreciate.
Wait, hold on,
I agree with the critique. I definitely didn't think of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I like that point that you're making. I think it's a good one. I felt the same way about the meat suits, and I felt the same way about the horses in Sorry to Bother You, even as I was at the time more forgiving of the film. And I was arguing it was my line at the time was Sorry to Bother You was to class what Get Out was to race. And I was trying to give cover to these filmmakers by saying they're forced by an industry to use absurdity and sci-fi and horror to try to tell some kind of meaningful story, which is fine up until the point that I think you're promoting it as a revolutionary act, which I don't think it is, or it's having revolutionary content, which I don't think it does. So, and to your point, which I'm echoing, is that it leads you somewhere and then it just falls. Yeah. So, no, right on. Anything else? There's a couple others want to jump up here. But if there's,
Oh, one more thing is just I just real quick. I just wanted to say that Sorry to Bother You should be seen because he is trying to make a point that he's not doing well, but it's one of those things because he's trying to spoon feed people. This is another film that now somebody who kind of understands what's going on should be like, hey, let's watch this together. So it's a film that should be seen. It's still ass, but it has to be watched with somebody else or you're going to get confused because it's ass. That's what I wanted to say. So shout out to you. Thank you, Dr. Bo, for letting me come on. I'll holler.
No, anytime.
Also,
appreciate
I have
you.
a podcast,
Yeah.
Do Rag with the Cape Road. Click my name and you'll be able to find my shit on YouTube.
Boom. There it is. Thank you very much, my man. Appreciate you. All right. Last. You next. Are you ready? Last. Welcome. Are you there? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I just was listening, and I was wondering what y'all meant by seizing state power. I haven't seen the movie, so it's hard to follow a little bit. But what exactly are we talking about when we're discussing seizing state power?
So what I mean, and I think a simple answer would be just seizing control over the political apparatus, the government, the public policy apparatus, and that's essentially what I mean in its simplest form. That you have national, state, governmental public policy, political power that would then allow you to determine where resources go, how wealth is created, how it's distributed, and then and ultimately to have control over popularizing histories, narratives, mythologies, myths of origin, political consciousness, and et cetera, and so forth.
I see that.
Or as David Silberg says, seizing state power equals seizing state power. That's funny. But yeah, that's essentially what I mean.
On the road to that, I feel like
You all right? You still here? Oh, nope, I guess not. Okay. So quickly, it's Art with Words wanted to share this. I'll put it in the link in the show description from the People's Forum, Artist Salon, Taking Sides, Artists on the Front Lines. I have not seen it, but Mtume is involved. So it can only be so bad, right? So I'll put the link in the show description because apparently there's more discussion of his argument around third cinema. But again, I also just want to promote his Patreon where you can sign up even for free. But as is the case with mine, as a safety reserve, just in case YouTube does his thing. But on his Patreon, you get not only his podcast, but he drops all these writings and short essays and interviews and all this other kind of stuff. Where in one of them, and I wrote it down somewhere, which is what is most frustrating to me because this is the time I did do it. I just don't know where. I cannot find it. But the where he just breaks down very succinctly his his arguments around third cinema and how the need for it to be produced. So definitely was FD's in the building. How would you taint Mtume? By what? Saying that the film is great? So, but listen, remember part 2 tomorrow on Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media. The link is already in the show description here for where more of us and more discussion of this film will take place. I do encourage people to see the film if you haven't, because if for no other reason, if at minimum for no other reason, I think it provides us it provides us another way and space and reason to talk about some of these politics, and particularly this fraught relationship between popularity and radical politics. And also, I mean, on some other bare minimums, by the way, again, as I started off with, I actually enjoy seeing other actors, other actresses. I do like, in general, some of the differences in the film in terms of the way it looks and stuff like that. So I'm not mad at being exposed to just different kinds of film, even if I don't think that they do everything that they claim or we would want. And as I said, we're going to watch a lot of other nonsense and spend money on a lot of other nonsense and even worse nonsense. So I don't, it's just as a revolutionary product, I don't find it as making that standard. So it's on that basis that I'm most critical. Now, somebody did ask a question: why the hate on sci-fi? And for me, that's just a bias. So that's why I'm saying I'm not judging the film negatively because it does sci-fi, other than its use of sci-fi to not properly give good story, narrative, and explanation of radical politics. But that's just the thing. I just am not a fan of it. I like, this is a personal bias, I like grounded in reality political dramas, or even comedies, or others. But I just like that grounded in this version of reality, and that through narrative and story and good acting convey. I don't need explosions. I definitely do not need sex scenes. I just need good story and the like. So a couple super chats here. Thank you very much. Welcome, Lloyd J. Hart. Uncle True, thank you. The Karen Hunter effect. And in fact, I think we're gonna review that again before I get out of here. Thank you, Allende. Appreciate you. Welcome. Oh, this is legendary right here. Dr. Dawn Alyssa Fisher, the deaf professor. This is actually an honor. Welcome. I appreciate that. Long time fave. All right. Cynical. Thank you. This is a fantasy world in which teleportation machines can be invented, but Palestine, the Congo, and Cuba clearly doesn't exist. But real workers are supposed to identify with this fantasy world. Wow, that's another good point. You know, I don't know that, is it fair to put all of that on Boots for one film? But that's a good point. Similar to the argument we just heard about the lack of state power and the lack of a Chinese state at all. There's no Congo, Cuba, or Palestine in this film. That's interesting. So Omega, thank you very much. Grateful for the space. Social media is having its annual No Afro Beats should be played on Juneteenth argument. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. So to that end, to the extent that you might find it being of some help, I did repost a Redux version of my commentary from last year's Juneteenth that I think is of some value in resetting the myth. And in this video, you'll find a link to the interview I did some years ago with the late Harry Jones and Dr. Gerald Horn about the real history of Juneteenth. So there's some, if you want to deal with that. And then folks, if you aren't a member, with obvious, or a patron, then you can just wait till tomorrow when this becomes available. But folks, please check this video out. My interview with Jennifer Black. I don't even know what to say. It'll be public tomorrow morning, but what is going on in academia and what in particular Black women are having to deal with is some nonsense. And in a rare, all too rare, I'm not judging anybody, but I understand why, but in an all too rare moment, we have someone willing to speak publicly about what they've had to deal with in these academic spaces. So please check that out tomorrow morning. But if you're a member or a patron, check it out now. And I don't even know what to say. It's super frustrating. Definitely salute to Baba Zach Kondo, who Mark Whitaker refers to as a young, obsessed Malcolm X scholar, student or some nonsense. So while I'm sitting here, mentioning things, I'll remind folks to also go check that video out, where I talk about this growing pile of trash scholarship about Malcolm X that Mark Whitaker added to, calling me out and then calling Baba Zach Kondo a young, obsessed Malcolm X. What a clown. This is just ridiculous what some of these folks out here doing. Thank you, Soul Mega. For those who asked, the Marxist-Leninist class is found through Sudeep's Substack, starts at 8 o'clock tonight. Oh, word. Okay, right on. Yeah, make sure you signed up on his Substack. It's very good stuff. Todd is in the building. When you going to join us, my man? Good to see you out here. But anyway, so speaking of our man Todd, oh man, priceless moments. See, y'all don't know about the time. Remember that movie where Wesley Snipes is in jail and he's a fighter and Ving Rhames is the world boxing champ who gets locked up? but Wesley's the real boxing champ in prison and demonstrates that, but nobody knows because they only fight in prison, and then the world thinks Ving Rhames is the world champ. There's a version of that happened at Sankofa Books some years ago, where Dr. Greg Carr sat down with Dr. Todd Stephen Burroughs and thought he was going to run his standard master teacher line, not knowing he had run up against the sledgehammer, the dicer that is Dr. Burroughs. But a couple of us were there to see it. Now the world may not know, but some of us were there. But let's have one more reminder of our good brother, Dr. Carr, of just a couple years ago.
And we should support black businesses. We got to support black. You know, my buddy Jared Ball, Dr. Ball, who is at Morgan State, talks about this myth of black buying power. Another brother who teaches at Duke University, Sandy Darity, says, you know, we can't pool our money together and using that, buy our way out of oppression.
Right.
This is
Never buy your way out.
You can't buy your way out. We can't
Talk
create enough
about it.
millionaires in a capitalist society. It just can't. Nick, as much money as you do or don't have, you can't write a check for everything you worth and free us.
Right.
It's not possible in a capitalist society.
Right.
I mean, LeBron James, that's great, brother. You're an employee.
Yeah.
You could be making $100 million a year, but guess what? Any cat that can write you a check for $100 million a year is making more money than you can count. You know what I'm saying?
And it's unfortunate because we do have so many young, prominent,
Come on, brother,
black individuals, but that oppression, capitalism, we will never overcome it.
No,
we can
the
operate
mind
within
has
it.
to change. Right.
You heard that right, my buddy, Dr. Jared Ball. Sandy Darity was just Sandy Darity, but it was my buddy, Dr. Jared Ball. What happened? God damn. They should have never let me find that clip. They should have never let me find that clip. But Dr. Burroughs, some of us were present that day, my brother. Some of us were present that day. Some of us were present that day and could bear witness. Oh my goodness. Had Dr. Carr looking through his notes like,
People be like, why do you go out of your way to be petty? And I'd be like, who said it was out of my way? It's directly on my route every single time. Petty-luya.
oh man, thank you very much, Guillermo Munoz. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. What's going on with the PSL? I was being poached, but I didn't know if I want to be part of that. I don't know. I do not know. I heard that someone has apparently come out with a statement, but I honestly don't know. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. So I don't know. I haven't seen any of the games. I do know that some Ghanaians were talking trash to my family when they scored their last minute goal to steal victory. But I haven't seen any of the games. So listen, by the way, yeah, Carlos talked about it, and I'm going to be joining him in a couple hours on Deculturation Live. So if you have not gotten enough of your boy today, come on through. And check that out. We'll be back tomorrow, Saturdays, with Renee with part 2 of this discussion of I Love Boosters. And I really appreciate all of you for coming and hanging out. And to those who popped up on stage, appreciate you as well. Thanks for the undefeated chat. Good to see Dr. Burroughs. And the deaf professor, salute. Yeah, vacation jabby on the internet. This is my vacate. This is how I vacate. And honestly, this is a lot of fun. I love it. It's great fun. And I appreciate all of you. So, but all right, good people, thank you very much. Peace as always, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say.
And we should support black.
It's like I was just playing. But I think this has been another great show, and with the help of the chat and some of the comrades that popped up, we hit another.
Home run to me.
Has some. And we always remember.
Only true power is violence.
Yeah.
And of course.
It's incredible. I love Rhonda.
All right, everybody. Peace. Only if you're willing to fight for it. Fred Hampton used to say, catch you next time.
And what did you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like.